when we talk about, language and getting the message across, obviously that's something that we're very proud of here at the HighWire. I think we've achieved a lot. We have seen this entire conversation change. And when I look back at what got us here, there's certainly always milestones in a movement. I think about our lawsuit wins, through Aaron Siri and Associates, the wins against the CDC, the FDA, Health and Human Services, all of this breaking, literally just destroying the foundation of this lie as we know it. And then there's the big moments where we marched. In fact, maybe like the Battle of Trenton was a huge, huge experience, because this was the belly of the beast. This was Trenton, New Jersey, one of the most pharma-driven states in the country, home to many of the pharmaceutical companies. We had a turnout of somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 people. They said we chanted outside of that state capitol, and they were trying to remove the religious exemption, and in the end, they failed. We had won. The people won. We staved off that final vote that they needed. And then Sweeney, who had led that entire charge, just this year, was deselected. He lost the election bid. Everyone thought he was untouchable. Those are certainly big moments. But for me, I think the moment where I started recognizing that this thing was shifting was when artists started getting involved, when musicians started getting involved. Once you start hearing songs and the musicians and the comedians, maybe I'm prone to that because I was an artist. I started out in theater. My wife and I were actually in a band together years ago, the Lee Nestor Band, my wife's band. We even opened for the Goo Goo Dolls. It was a great time and fun memory for us. But when I think about that, when I think about the soundtrack of the time, I think about the 1960s, which were the stories I grew up with. My parents marched in the 1960s. It's that soundtrack of the 1960s, to me, that leaves that indelible mark that feels like once the artists were behind it, that is when that movement really took hold. And it's what we remember when we think of the 1960s. I think it's the music and the soundtrack of that time. So when artists started singing about medical freedom and songs parodying, the issues around Tony Fauci, and artists, we started seeing comedians crack jokes about the pandemic. That's when I started thinking, it's happening. This is real. From here on out, it's only a matter of time when we actually win this. And so it's really a pleasure and an honor when I think about, as I've been on these stages and starting to hear music being played that are our songs, the songs of this movement, of this revolution, if you will. It's been very exciting. And one of those artists that I've stood on stages with before, and has got some amazing songs. We played his music videos. Sad Little Man, which is one of my favorites, about Tony Fauci. Of course, I'm talking about Brad Skistimas and 5 Times August, who joins me now. Brad, awesome.
Okay. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming in studio today.
Yeah.
So this is a weird topic to sing about. And let's be honest. I mean, the 1960s, it's anti-war, it's all these things. But, medical freedom, health freedom, vaccinations. When did you decide, you know what? As an artist, I need to say something about this?
Yeah, I think towards the end of 2020, my wife has actually been involved in the medical freedom movement since our first son was born.
Okay.
And, we, as new parents, you just go along and you just listen to whatever you're supposed to do. And, he got his early vaccines and had some adverse reactions to it that he's still dealing with today. Mm-hmm. And so the information has been floating in my ether, and the more it encroached upon my doorstep, it was sort of like I was looking around, looking for my peers to speak up. Yeah. Musically, I'm going, where is everybody? And I kind of felt like I don't want to look back on this time and feel like I didn't say anything. Mm-hmm. So I started speaking out through my music, and I just felt like it had to be said because nobody else was really saying anything.
Right. Now, your career doesn't start here. You've been in music for how long now?
2 decades now.
2 decades now. And is there something about how that career went? Have you always sort of been singing music about, rebelling against the system or the man? I mean, what is it that leads you here, or was this a sort of step out?
This was definitely a step out. I mean, I liked pleasing people. I like being in the middle and just having a big dynamic audience that, you know, we all get along. Like, music is supposed to bring people together.
Yeah.
You go to a concert, it's not a divisive experience. You can be, you know, standing next to somebody who believes in completely different things than you do, but you're singing the same song, you're looking at each other, you're smiling. I like that about music. But it reached a point where, you know, I started speaking out, like I said, at the beginning of, or at the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021. And it just sort of, you know, I was dipping my toe in the water, so to speak, going like, well, I'm going to say something that I know I'm going to lose fans from saying this. And sure enough, that happened. But what also happened was I started getting more feedback from people going, oh my gosh, thank you so much for speaking out. And the more I got that feedback, the more encouraging it was. And I would release the next song after that and the next song after that. And each time I'd think like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble for this. But what the feedback was really was from people going like, thank you for speaking up. Because that message is not being portrayed anywhere in entertainment. There's a handful of guys out there right now that are in music and entertainment and in comedy. And, you know, it's really starting to usher in the message in a new way that hasn't really been approached yet, I don't think. So, no, my career was always a safe path. You know, I was singing love songs for, 20 years. And that's kind of where that was my domain. And every now and then I would release a song that had like a bigger picture, a more come together message. But like, this was definitely crossing a line.
So when you put out that first song, were you sort of careful about your message, or did you feel like you let it rip? Were you trying to test your audience, and how did your audience respond?
Yeah, the first song I released was called God Help Us All. And it was a toe dip into, okay, like I said, I know this is going to turn some people off. I don't know how much. We'll see what the tolerance level is. And I thought I was being pretty careful. But then you would get these messages from people that are like, oh my gosh, like, I've been listening to you forever. How could you say that? I'm deleting your music. And like I said, but then for every one of those messages, you get 5 or 6 or 7 more messages from people that are like, wow, you know, I needed to hear that. And so it's just very encouraging to put out that kind of message and get that kind of feedback, because I felt like it was just me venting through my music. Music is supposed to be a reflection of the times and how the artist portrays the world, and you don't really see that in art so much right now. There's no real clear message, and these are confusing times. So for me to pick that path and be like, well, I'm going to say what I truly believe in for the first time ever. We'll see how this goes. You know, I felt for a long for the first couple songs, I was like, I'm either burning down everything I've ever worked for, or I'm building something new up here. And you know, it's been very rewarding for sure.
You know, when we think about rock and roll, you know, I mean, it's sex, drugs, rock and roll, live in the moment, live or die, like this whole attitude. Yet all of the rockers we grew up with, I mean, it feels like where are they, right? I mean, the only guy I think that I can really think of, you know, that I grew up listening to is Eric Clapton, you know, but everybody else seems to just be like, oh yeah, compliance. Like, these guys are more afraid of death than they at least portrayed in their youth. You know, so I guess it's time for a new generation. There is a new generation. I wrote down some of the guys we've been featuring here: Jimmy Levy, RC the Rapper, Bryson Gray, High Res, Blind Joe, writing great music. Do you feel like there's a new genre, you know, here? You know, is this, are we at a place where we can call this a genre yet?
I think so. I don't know what you would call it, conspiracy rock, what they call it, or something like that. No, it's an exciting time for sure. It does feel like something new. It feels like a rekindling of, that's a lot of the feedback that I get on YouTube, is people going, you know, an older generation going like, wow, I thought this was dead and gone, the spirit of the 60s. It's just weird because it's a 180 in and of itself. All those rebellious rockers have grown up, and now it seems like they're part of the system. They sort of bailed on us. You're like, you know, you're hoping that they show up. I mean, even with Eric Clapton, he spoke up. He got the vaccine. He told us about his experience, and he's still slandered and labeled anti-vaxxer and conspiracy and what happened to Eric Clapton. And Rolling Stone releases all these like smear articles, and you know, he's just telling. That's why so many people, I think, are afraid to speak up, because their whole career's on the line. I think these independent guys like me and everybody you just listed out, we have an opportunity as independent artists that don't have a team of people. We don't have lawyers and A&R agents
Right.
and record labels telling us what to think and what we're going to say through our next single. We're actually speaking, we're saying things that we actually mean and want to say to the world. And that hasn't been done, I don't think, in a really long
Right.
time
Yeah.
with music.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, where it actually is speaking to the times, there's more power to it. This isn't just a love story. It's not, about, your problem with someone across the street. This is a global moment.
Hmm.
And what better time? I mean, I do reflect on my parents' involvement in the '60s. I mean, I don't know if I grew up as a singer, as an artist, filmmaker. I even worked in New York. I did musical theater, so I ended up touring with Hair the musical. I got the Broadway touring company all over Europe. I played George Berger, which was a rock and roll musical. It was a great time, and I think about how that contributed to my life now. Like that was a very rebellious character I was playing, but representing that sort of moment of, again, I think George Berger in Hair is like my body, my choice. Like I'm going to burn this draft card. You don't own me. You don't get to tell me what to do. And there's so much of that does feel like it's palpable right now. The tension is growing, the oppression on people all over the world. So when you watch, these images of Australia, you know what I mean? Like, and policemen like beating innocent people, unarmed people in the streets, and hearing about lockdowns. When you write a song now, is there some part of it that is, I suppose, as we think about how music works, it never leaves you. It's really the emotion, right? It's the emotion of the people of the time. Do you feel like you're putting it in a time capsule of sorts?
Yeah, I think that it feels like I'm sort of investing into the future. Like what I'm writing right now isn't, it might not connect with everybody.
Right.
It's going to make some people mad. And my hope is, ideally down the road, they come back around and they go, oh, I get it now.
Right.
I get what they were doing. Everything I've released over the span of my career has come from a real place. Yeah. And so I'm coming from a place now as a father and somebody who cares about what's happening in the world. I don't want to leave this place behind for my kids and their kids the way it is now.
Yeah. Do you feel like that? I mean, as we said, there's other musicians. When you stepped out, like you were one of the only ones there. As you start, are you feeling momentum? Like there are others that are really going to start. Do you think this is growing? And
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. You hope to see it. I would like to see bigger artists with a larger platform speak out. Everybody has sort of a machine behind them. So guys like me, I think we're starting to really see that, like, this is our time to speak up. If you don't have a machine behind you, if you don't have a record label kind of telling you what to say, what to think, what to do, this is your chance to really speak up if this is what you believe in. So it's an important time for sure.
Well, it's an important time. You're right in the middle of it. It's really awesome. You're bringing that energy. I mean, it's so great because it can get so heavy, all the speaking, all the shouting at these stages. To have you standing on these platforms, on these stages in front of Capitals, playing music, I think it's opening people's hearts up, which I think is what music does so well. I mean, how much can you penetrate if it's just, a bunch of intense energy? Music takes us to another place. It opens us up so we can really let it sink in. I think it's so important that you're here and you're doing it. So I understand I think we're going to attempt to have a live performance. What song are you going to sing?
I'm going to do I Will Not Be Leaving Quietly.
All right. And if people want to check out your music in the future, where do we go?
5timesaugust.com.
Okay.
And you can follow me on all the socials, just at 5timesaugust.
All right.
On all the socials.
5 Times August live here in studio. Take a listen. Here we go.
You can hate me, try to break me, talk me down and denigrate me. You can try to silence every word, but I will not be leaving quietly. I won't leave. I won't leave. I will not be leaving quietly. You can
mock me, try to outsmart me. You can shame me and try to blame me. You can do your best to shut me up, but I will not be leaving quietly now. I won't leave, I won't leave, I will not be leaving quietly now. I'm gonna stand here and I'll fight for every word. I'm gonna shout the truth until you know it's heard. I'm gonna stand here and I'll fight for every word. I'm gonna shout the truth until you know it's heard. Yeah, yeah. You can scold me, attempt to control me, ban me and censor, and label and troll me. You can push me and try to kick me out, but I will not be leaving quietly now. I won't leave, I won't leave, I will not be leaving quietly. You can mute me, strike and dispute me, dumb down the rest, yeah, but I'll keep refusing. You can pretend like you've seen the last of me, but I will not be leaving quietly now. I won't leave, I won't leave, I will not be leaving quietly. I'm gonna stand here and I'll fight for every word. I'm gonna shout the truth until you know it's heard. I'm gonna stand here and I'll fight for every word. I'm gonna shout the truth until you know it's heard. Yeah, yeah. You can hate me, try to break me, talk me down and denigrate me. You can try to silence every word, but I will not be leaving quietly now. I won't leave, I won't leave, I will not be leaving quietly now. I won't leave, I won't leave, I will not be leaving quietly now. I won't leave, I won't leave, I will not be leaving quietly.
Yeah. All right, that is awesome. Yeah.